We're now at the precipice of a regional war. It's not the first time though. Up until now, Iran and Israel have dodged bullets left and right, narrowly avoiding full-scale war. But Syria has fundamentally changed the playing field. Just a few hours after Assad's exit, Israeli ground forces moved into the Syrian side of the Golan Heights, expanding the demilitarized zone and taking strategic heights. Israeli tanks now sit within 30 kilometers of Damascus, possibly closer. Meanwhile, Israeli jets have bombed and destroyed chemical weapons sites and other advanced weaponry in Syria to keep them out of extremist hands. Explosions have been seen at Medza Air Base near Damascus, and this particular airstrike near Tartus was so massive that it registered a 3.0 magnitude earthquake. The damage is extensive. Helicopters, jet fighters, and missile depots have been wiped out. Elsewhere, the Israeli Air Force has hit targets near Aleppo, Qamishli, Latakia, Quneitra, Hama, Homs, and other places. Altogether, more than 480 targets have been struck, the largest air operation in Israel's history. At least 80% of Syria's military capacity has already been destroyed, and the rest is likely to be taken out in the coming weeks. This is a game changer. It gives Israel the ability to launch preemptive airstrikes on Iran's military and nuclear sites without needing help or approval from the United States. A small nudge can now tilt a superpower's balance. By the way, the website you've been seeing is called Ground News. I use it all the time, especially when researching controversial topics like this one. There's just so much confusion about what's happening in and around Syria. Every side tries to spin the truth in their favor, but with Ground News, I have the tools to read both local and regional sources, which allows me to consider all sides of the Syrian conflict. And I truly believe that is the best way of understanding this troubled region. I can't stress enough how important this is, which is why I asked Ground News to sponsor this video. The blind spot page is where I browse the most. They highlight all kinds of interesting stories that go under the radar of other media outlets. Go to ground.news/Caspian or scan the QR code on the screen to learn more. Subscribing through this link gets you 50% off the Vantage plan this month, either for yourself or to send as a gift to someone you know. Also, by subscribing, you're directly supporting my channel. Thank you, Ground News. The link is below. This video shows the destruction of Syria's helicopters, fighter jets, and related air defense systems. But what you're also seeing is the opening move in a chess game. Israel is turning Syria into what they call a sterile defense zone. By doing so, by removing Syria as a threat, Israel is actually opening a corridor that sets the stage for a massive preemptive strike against Iran. You see, by destroying virtually all of Syria's air defenses, the aerial front line has shifted 600 to 700 kilometers closer to Syria's eastern border. Israel can now fly its tanker aircraft hundreds of kilometers further east, which makes it possible for its fighter jets to fly to Iran and back without running out of fuel. This wasn't possible before, and it changes everything. For added context, Syria used to possess one of the world's most densely concentrated array of air defense batteries. Think of mid-tier Russian systems such as SA-17, SA-22, SA-6, SA-8, and SA-5 batteries. Now, while F-35 jets can sneak past these systems, tanker aircraft cannot. And therein was the problem. Tanker aircraft are large, slow, and lack stealth. Even outdated anti-aircraft guns pose a threat to them. Heck, the air defense systems Syria employed even posed a threat to F-16s. In 2018, Syria actually shot down an Israeli F-16 as the conflict between the two escalated. So, for Israeli tanker aircraft, Syrian airspace was a no-fly zone, and this restrained the range of Israel's military options. it was never really possible to conduct an airstrike going from Israel to Iran and back. The scale and distance of such an operation didn't leave much room for error. Even now, Israeli F-35s are restrained by this. These jets have a range of 2100 kilometers, give or take. Suppose Israel launched its F-35s from Ramat David Air Base. The trip to Tehran and back would be at least 3000 kilometers beyond the range of its jets. This doesn't even include the aerial maneuvers the aircraft would be making or the payload it would be carrying. External fuel tanks are not an option either. These would change the aircraft's geometric shape and reduce its stealth capabilities. Without stealth, it would be difficult to get past Iran's air defense systems, which are some of the most advanced in the region. So, a large-scale preemptive strike against Iran with the best odds of returning full numbers would have to be a stealth mission. That means no external fuel tanks or even external missiles. But for argument's sake, even with external fuel tanks, the operational range for the F-35 would extend only to 2700 kilometers. That still falls short. And so, for Israel, aerial dominance over Iran was never quite possible, not without American involvement, at least. All that has changed now with the neutralization of Syria's air defenses. The Israeli Air Force says it has destroyed 80% of Syria's short to medium range SA-22 systems and 90% of its medium range SA-17 systems. Again, these were never a threat to Israel's F-35s, but they were a threat to its tanker aircraft. Now, with only a handful of air defense systems remaining in Syria, Israel has effectively opened an aerial corridor through which its air force can move freely across, including its tanker aircraft. The aerial front line has moved up by 600 to 700 kilometers to Syria's eastern edge, where Israel's tanker aircraft can loiter and offset the distance for its fighter jets. So, Israeli jets can now technically take off from Ramat David Air Base, fly along the Syrian aerial corridor, cross into Iraq, and then fly into Iran to bomb and destroy military and nuclear facilities. Upon completion, the jets would then return to Syrian airspace for refueling before heading back home. If the Israelis feel particularly confident, they can even carry out a decapitation strike targeting Iran's supreme leader and the IRGC command. So, in short, by taking out Syria's air defenses, Israel now has a window of opportunity to launch a large-scale preemptive attack on Iran's nuclear and military infrastructure. And this opportunity may be too good to miss. With the incoming Trump administration, Netanyahu will likely bank on the new military options on the table and look to persuade Trump to join him in attacking Iran. Even if Trump doesn't feel like it, by the time of his inauguration, Israel will have the means to go at it alone and then drag the United States into a war.
בתוך כמה ימים השמדנו יכולות שמשטר אסד בנה במשך עשרות שנים. על כל זה שוחחתי אמש, שוב עם ידידי נשיא ארצות הברית הנבחר דונלד טראמפ. זו הייתה שיחה מאוד ידידותית, מאוד חמה ומאוד חשובה. דיברנו על הצורך להשלים את ניצחון ישראל.
With its back against the wall, Iran will now be racing to reinforce its proxy, Hezbollah, to re-establish deterrence. For years, Israel and Iran held a stalemate that prevented full-out war. Iran had a network of proxies, which it used as leverage against Israel. The most powerful of these is Hezbollah, based in Lebanon. So, if Israel launched a large-scale attack against Iran, the Iranian leadership would give Hezbollah the go-ahead to rain fire down on Israel. Back in 2018, Hezbollah was estimated to have roughly 130,000 rockets and missiles in its arsenal. However, in June 2024, an official from Iran's Quds force overseeing Hezbollah operations went on record saying that Hezbollah had more than 1 million rockets and missiles. True or not, even the low end of this estimate is massive firepower. However, Israel's recent decapitation strikes against Hezbollah have substantially downgraded the group's capabilities. Most of the rockets and missiles are still in Lebanon, but Hezbollah's command structure has been compromised, maybe even beyond repair. We'll come back to this later, but the point is that without the threat of Hezbollah, Iran is left without deterrence. So the Iranians will do their best to reinforce Hezbollah as swiftly as possible. But there is a problem. Amidst the chaos in Syria, Israel took the liberty to create a buffer zone near the Golan Heights, southwest of Damascus. While Syrian rebels marched on the capital, Israeli units swiftly mobilized into Syria's abandoned positions in the Golan Heights and took them without a fight. The Israeli leadership says the objective is to deter hostile forces from encroaching towards Israel, and Netanyahu calls it a temporary operation. But the territory they've taken is up to twice the size of Gaza, and it's of such strategic importance that Israel is unlikely to leave.
The Syrian army abandoned its positions. We gave the Israeli army the order to take over these positions to ensure that no hostile force embeds itself right next to the border of Israel. This is a temporary defensive position until a suitable arrangement is found.
You see, one notable thing during that Golan Height operation, and this is another chess move, is that the Israelis have silently conquered the Syrian side of Mount Hermon, which peaks at 2,814 meters altitude. Mountains tend to create blind spots for air defenses, particularly radars. In this case, Mount Hermon had, for decades, overshadowed Israel's air defenses, making it difficult to see beyond the mountains and into parts of Lebanon. Low-flying planes and drones could exploit this blind spot, allowing them to infiltrate Israel time and again. That's likely how Iranian and Hezbollah drones infiltrated deep into Israel all the way into Haifa. This same blind spot was also part of Iran's land bridge into Lebanon. Using the cover of Mount Hermon, Iran was able to reinforce Hezbollah with resources right under Israel's nose. Things have changed now. With the Israelis in control of Mount Hermon, they will look to establish radars on its peaks, which will allow them to see deep into both Syria and Lebanon. As these facilities are set up, Israel will create an early warning system for incoming low-flying jets and drones. At the same time, Israeli intelligence will be able to employ Mount Hermon to observe Iranian and Hezbollah movements. The list of strategic applications goes on, but the point is that with Mount Hermon under Israeli control, Iran will have a hard time reinforcing Hezbollah. Any hostile movement in southern Lebanon and Syria will now be detected by the Israelis and come at the mercy of its aircraft, drones, and missiles. Hezbollah's new chief said as much on Saturday, saying that the group had lost its supply route through Syria. But even if somehow Iran could reach Hezbollah through an alternative path, it wouldn't do any good. As mentioned before, Hezbollah has been compromised, deeply so. Weeks of back-to-back decapitation strikes have destroyed Hezbollah's hierarchy. As the group lost one leader after another, one officer after another, new members have been promoted to fill vacant ranks. Israel's intelligence agency Mossad already had agents within Hezbollah's lower ranks. But with the decapitation strikes, those low-ranking agents were given the room to move up to higher positions. That's how intelligence operations work. And by doing so for weeks on end, it's safe to say Israel has thoroughly infiltrated Hezbollah. So even if Iran were to re-establish ties to Hezbollah, the group has too many leaks within to retain any operability. And suppose Iran cannot find and remove the Israeli agents within Hezbollah, it will only be a matter of time before the group loses its capabilities, even with all the rockets and missiles it possesses. What this all means is that without Hezbollah as a credible deterrence, with the Israelis controlling Mount Hermon, and with Syria's aerial corridor in play, war looms on the horizon. There are now reports that Trump's team is considering preemptive airstrikes against Iran. But it's really Netanyahu who has made it possible in the first place. He's basically handing Trump that option on a silver platter. Before long, we could see 100,000 tons of diplomacy headed to Iran. I've been your host Shirvan from Caspian Report. Thank you for your time and Sawal.